My worst nightmare is this vision of driving my children to school in my car and then making sure they got their school uniforms on. And when they come home, I have to wash them, school uniforms, in a washing machine. I can't think of anything worse.
From Mamma Mia, you're listening to No Filter, candid conversations that count. I'm Mia Friedman, and I couldn't be more opposite to my guest today. For the past 8 years, Miriam Lancewood and her husband Peter have lived deep, deep in the wilderness of New Zealand. No phones, no internet, no bed, no refrigerator, no electricity, no concept of time. They're completely and utterly off the grid. And while that sounds absolutely terrifying to me, they wouldn't have it any other way. But they haven't always lived like this. Miriam was once a teacher in Holland and her husband was a university lecturer. And then one day in 2010, they packed up their lives, gave away all their possessions and turned their back on civilization. So what happens when you're thousands of kilometres away from the nearest town and you get sick? Or you want to know what time it is and you don't have a watch or a phone? What about food? Miriam went from being a vegetarian to hunting and killing her own meat. As you can imagine, I had so many questions. Miriam was in a tin hut in tropical North Queensland when we recorded our interview. That's not where she lives. That's just where she'd come to be for a couple of weeks. So you might hear a little bit of noise on that tin roof when it starts to rain. I could have spoken to Miriam for hours. It was so interesting, and I hope you find it just as fascinating as I did. Miriam, can we start with washing your hair in wee? Now, I know that's a predictable place to start, but it's either a high point or a low point for me when reading the book. I wanted to know how you felt about it and how it actually came about.
Well, that was in the first winter, and I was suffering from dandruff. And it was quite bad. And, of course, we didn't have any special shampoos for dandruff. And it was, I was scratching my hair all the time. And Peter said, I've heard something about Inuits or the Eskimos, some people up north who treat the dandruff with morning urine.
Morning urine? It has to be morning.
And to women. He said women's urine from the morning. So I thought I'd give it a go, What does it matter?
Yeah, well...
There's no one out there.
And also it's your own. So let's be honest, yes. It's better than if it's someone else's.
Yes, indeed. So I peed in a little tin and I wet my hair first because if you don't, it just sort of slides off and then doesn't get into the hair at all. So I wet my hair, peed in the tin and then poured the tin of morning urine over my head.
And how did that go?
Well, there's nothing to it. Just wait, and then you smell the urine, and just wait a bit longer, and then you wash it up.
And did it work?
Wash it with soap again. Yes, it did work very well.
Okay, so let's just switch gears for a second. How did you get to be in the wilderness, weighing into a tin that you then poured onto your head? What was the journey that took you to that very surprising point in your life?
Well, I was working at the time as a teacher in New Zealand. So I was born in Holland. I met Peter on my travel in India, and we settled down in New Zealand for a little while, and I had to work as a teacher for my residency. So that's why I just had a job and everything. We had a little cottage, and in the weekend we used to go hiking. And we liked that very much, and we never want to go back on Sundays. In the meantime, I was reading those expedition books about people who go to the Antarctic and, do very, very extreme things. And since I was like a teenager, I also wanted to do this sort of expedition. So I was always scheming on things, and Peter as well. So we said, why don't we go into the wilderness, live in a tent for 4 seasons, just 4 seasons. Of course, we didn't know we would last more than 8 years.
What was the first night like?
The first night was very, very quiet. So we arrived, and then a sort of vast silence and feeling of space of, wow, this is, there's nobody around us for maybe 100 kilometers or more. We were very, very isolated at that point. But to walk out, it would have been 4 days walk and then 100-kilometer hitchhiking.
Wow. Did you put parameters around how you were going to live when you got there?
Well, the idea was to do 3 months, so 4 seasons, and in 4 different places. So we had ourselves organized with food, and we calculated that you need 150 kilos of food to survive for 3 months. Of course, we were going to do the hunting and the gathering, but still we always had backup supplies like rice and flour, lentils, because I didn't know how to hunt at that stage. I had to learn all that. So it took me a while to learn that, and in that time we had to have something to eat.
What other preparations did you have to make? Because obviously there's no medical care out there, there's no emergency dental care. What other things did you have to do to sort of prepare your life, I suppose, to go into the wilderness?
Well, I did a few first aid courses. I'm very lucky with Peter. He's got a lot of knowledge and experience, but he knows especially a lot about medical conditions, what medicines to take when. So we had a whole box, big first aid kit, and we very well prepared in case something happened. Luckily, we never needed to use any of our medicines that we took with us. We also found out that we needed woolen clothing rather than plastic, synthetic clothing, because we stand around a fire all the time. And one little spark that comes onto your trousers will burn a little hole, right? And then the sand flies come through. So they found a tiny, tiny little hole in your trousers. So, of course, I had always needle and thread with me for that reason. But we found out it's much better to have cotton clothing and woolen clothing. It's also much warmer.
How did you decide what to pack? Packing for any vacation, holiday, business trip is always difficult. How did you decide what to pack for a year in the wilderness?
We got rid of all our belongings, and we only had left only what we needed. And we decided what we needed because we'd done all the tramping in the weekend. So we realized that you really need very little. You need, I still have the same sort of clothing, really. 2 shorts, 3 shirts, 1 woolen jumper, 1 long, 1 legging. Yeah, that's it. A couple of socks. Not much.
And what about toiletries?
I've got a toothbrush and we've got toothpaste, but we also brush our teeth with ash and charcoal. They keep very white.
You've got very white teeth. That's true.
Charcoal.
You've got a very, looking at your face, which listeners won't be able to see, but you've got a beautiful sort of open face. You don't wear makeup. You look very natural. Have you always been like this? Was it any kind of sacrifice to not have makeup or skincare or nice clothes that make you feel good? Has that ever been currency for you?
Oh, no, I never wore much makeup, no. But actually, by living in the wilderness, my health improved a lot overall. For example, my hair got a lot thicker by eating meat.
Because you were a vegetarian, weren't you?
Yes, indeed. So by eating meat, and especially that very good wild meat, I feel now a lot stronger. And my hair got thicker, my fingernails are thicker. And, my skin is better. But also because we drink very good water in New Zealand. Every water is full of minerals. And that must be very healthy.
Miriam, what about tampons? What did you do about the fact that you'd be getting your period, if that's not too personal a question?
It's very, very personal question. No, not at all. I use a moon cup. It's fantastic. It's silicone-based thing that looks like a wine glass, really. A red wine glass. And you take that out, wash it in the river and put it back in. So it's much better for the environment, super handy and super light and not so big in volume, so easy to carry.
Were you using that before you went into the wilderness or did you have to get used to it?
I had to get used to it, yeah. I hadn't heard of it, but then a friend told me and super handy.
Did you consult with other people who'd done similar things before? And I mean, it sounds like the moon cup was one tip that you got. Did you know anyone that had done something similar? And what did they tell you? What advice did they give you?
No, we didn't meet anyone who'd done something similar. But of course, we read some books about mountain climbers and people who climb Everest and those sort of things. But those are all extreme things. And those people, they have an adventure. and they might survive or might not survive, and then they go back home. And that is one big difference with us, that we don't have a choice. If we don't like it anymore, we don't have a choice. We have to endure. We can't go home.
Well, you could. I mean, you could both decide to say, well, this is not fun.
Yeah, of course. Then we go back into town, stay with friends, find a rental property, find a job. Of course, we could do that. We're confident that we can do that if we need to. But it's not so easy. Yeah. If you're out in the forest and don't like it anymore,
it'd take a while from the point you decided to bail. It would not be instantaneous, right?
No.
Now, what you talk about in the book is when you settled on the place that you were going to set up camp, you then had a period of intense boredom.
Yes, and I found out that is almost needed for the mind to slow down. So the mind is very fast when you arrive, when you leave civilization, because of technology, of social interaction, fast-paced. And then you come into a natural place, and the natural rhythm of the wilderness, of nature in general, is very slow. And so the mind needs to adjust. But to get there, you feel very restless for a little bit. And then you got first the fear of boredom, which is almost worse than the boredom. And then you go through a period of boredom, and you have to learn the art of doing nothing. And that is very difficult because we're not used to that at all. We're always used to keeping ourselves busy and prevent boredom and have lots of hobbies. And that's quite an adjustment. And that took about 2 weeks to calm down. And that is, of course, exactly the time people go on holiday.
Yes, which is why when you're feeling relaxed, you have to go back to work. I've learnt that I'm not very good in that state when I take away all my stimulation. So even when I go on holiday, I've learnt that my mind needs a project. My mind needs to have something to do. It doesn't have to be work, but it has to be something.
Yes, that's the nature of the mind.
So what did you
always wants to?
Yeah, what did you do? I mean, there were no phones to look at. There was obviously no technology. Did you read books? Did you play music? Like, what did you do?
Well, we actively try to do nothing and let the mind calm down. And then the whole environment comes to life. So you see the beauty of it, you see the small movement, and you do very little. But, of course, we have things to do. For every cup of tea, we have to light the fire. So we're often busy with gathering firewood, lighting the fire. Sometimes it takes a long time when it's raining. And we go on walks. When the weather is good, we go exploring. And then we find berries, for instance. Sometimes in New Zealand we find...
when you find berries?
Yeah, very. Yeah. In New Zealand, for instance, we find a lot of totara berries. They're tiny. But we got plenty of time. So we sit down and we just pick and eat. And this takes like 2 hours or 3 hours. But who cares? We don't have a clock, so we don't measure anything. And we just eat until we're done. And we carry on.
Tell me about losing a sense of time. Was that a difficult process? Not checking your watch, how do you know when it is during the day? How do you know what you're doing, how long things have taken? Or is the whole point that it doesn't matter?
It doesn't matter at all. No.
Yeah, so it's just like what you eat when you're hungry, not because it's lunchtime.
Yeah. So we get up when it's light, we go to bed when it's dark, we eat when we're hungry.
Wow.
All the rest is totally irrelevant. Whether the number on the clock says 12 or 1 or 2, what does it matter?
So that must be a real mental process, letting go of that, because to me that feels quite scary, the idea of letting go of the concept of time or what day of the week it is. Like, are you even aware of what day of the week it is? I suppose it doesn't mean anything.
Totally irrelevant. Yeah. That's all totally abstract concepts, of course. And out there doesn't mean anything. No.
Do you keep track of time so that you know sort of roughly what date it is or what month it is, or...?
Yeah, sometimes we sort of calculate, okay, we've been here so long, and we try to remember back. Yeah, we get a rough idea of time. Yeah, but not the time of the day, we don't know. But more tricky is what I discovered is we find security into knowing what the future will bring. So we almost psychologically dependent on knowing what we're going to do tomorrow, next week, next year. Yeah, but if you plan because of that, you already take away all spontaneous things that might happen, because you've already planned it, right?
Do you make plans when you're in the wilderness?
Very little, in that sense. We move places when we feel like it. We don't need to plan that. But on the other hand, we need to be very organized, because if you're not organized, you're going to die. For instance, simple things like just before it gets dark, we need to get everything ready, because it's such a nuisance to find things in the dark.
Do you have a torch?
With a little flashlight.
Oh.
We've got a little solar panel flashlight, yeah, but still. It's better to know where's what and brush your teeth and all that before it's dark and get everything ready for bed. Yeah, those sort of things. But also, you need to get all the firewood ready before it rains, not when it rains. Those sort of things.
Tell me about hunting and the first hunt that you went on.
Hunting was very, very interesting process for me, because over the month I discovered that my senses improved. So my eyesight improved, my ears became better, sense of smell was a lot better after some months. And I thought all these things, those are natural to us. Our ancestors lived like this. This is how our ancestors survived. So it's amazing that it just comes back naturally if you live naturally. So, it was very fascinating to see that all coming back, and even a sense of intuition of where the goats might be.
So goats were what your source of food was going to be?
Yes, because we did some hiking, so we knew that there would be goats in certain places, not all, and there would be possums. And so we were after the introduced animals, because all the native animals, the native birds, are very protected. We're obviously not going to eat them, there are not many left. But all the introduced animals from Europe and Australia, like the possum in Australia, they all became a pest in New Zealand, and the government is trying to reduce the numbers, because there's no natural predator for those animals, so the numbers are going really over the top.
What was it like killing your first animal?
That first animal was actually a possum that was in the trap. And I thought I knew how to kill it efficiently, effectively. But actually it was much more difficult than I thought. Possums are not easy to kill. And so we had a little axe, and I hit the head with the axe. But it didn't die. And it just kept looking at me with its cute brown eyes. And I started to panic. And Peter then said, I will take it over and I'll just want to finish the job. But that's, you can read all about it in the book, but that was very traumatic experience.
Why had you been a vegetarian up until that point?
Well, my mother never cooked meat, so I grew up vegetarian. And I thought, for ethical reasons, and it's not very healthy to buy meat in the supermarket in Europe. So I grew up in Holland. There's no wild animals there. It never occurred to me to hunt anyway. By the way, what you hear now is the rain on the roof.
Ah,
and so
beautiful.
I can hardly hear you.
I can hear you well. That's just like a bit of background static.
Yep.
So now I can hear you perfectly well.
Yeah, okay, great. There's heavy showers, they don't last long. But so I started eating meat when I arrived in New Zealand, and actually when I started hunting. And when I learned about the ethical problems, the ecological problems with introduced animals.
You mentioned a trap to kill the possum. Was that a trap that you'd built yourself or something that you'd brought with you?
Oh, no, we bought it in a shop. It's one of those iron things, it catches the leg.
Oh, dear.
And it's still alive. Oh. And then it sees you coming and it's very afraid and it's looking at you with big brown eyes.
Oh, Miriam, I'm so I get so upset. And then it got worse because then you killed a goat.
Then I killed a goat.
And it was a baby goat. Tell me that
It was a baby goat. And around my neck, I still carry the little horn of the baby goat, because it is important, if you eat meat, to know that some animal somewhere died for you to eat. And that everything is part of this big circle of life and death, including us. So to carry this goat horn around my neck is also a little symbol that life is not eternal. And that one day, I will also die. And so then I go back to the earth and, some animals or plants might eat me. And so everything is part of this big circle. And that we really should enjoy the day while we got it. And understand the whole reality of life and death.
So that little goat was probably enjoying its day before you came along with the bow and arrow. You were hunting with a bow and arrow. Why a bow and arrow did you choose, and what was the process like of hunting on that first day?
First of all, I didn't think it was very difficult. I had grossly underestimated it, and I thought it would be really cool, me running around with a bow and arrow like Robin Hood. And I practiced on a target and was quite good at it. And I thought, well, how difficult can it be? And I was absolutely wrong. It is very difficult, and especially very difficult to hunt with a bow and arrow. So after 2 years, I switched to a rifle, which is much more humane. The animal dies much quicker. And an arrow is about $15, and a bullet is about 15 cents. So it's also not such an expensive goat.
How did you come to actually kill this little goat?
I had to walk. So we're camping on top of a mountain, actually. We're often camping on high places because we always cook on a fire, and then the smoke goes up, right? But if you camp in a valley, then the smoke goes up the valley. So all the animals up the valley will think, oh, there's somebody down there. Let's get away quickly. So in order to secure the hunting, we camp often in high places. So I had to walk all the way down, but there's no path or anything. So I had to bush bash, find my own way, even cut my way through some jungle. I had done that in a week before. I had made a little track for myself. And then I found a little goat. And of course, when there is a little goat, there is a mother goat and a father goat. And then I decided to get the little goat, and I shot it. And then the father and the mother stood around it.
Oh, how did you shoot it? Like, do you aim for a special part? Does it die straight away?
This one died straight away because I hit it in the heart. That was a lucky shot, I must say. Died straight away, and then of course the Billy and the nanny stood around it, and they didn't want to go. But funny enough, they also understood that I was not going to harm them. So for my feeling, we stood around for like 10 minutes. It can't have been, but for my feeling, it took a very long time. We're standing around the Billy and the nanny, and the just killed little kid. And
did you feel
sort
bad?
of all looked at it. Oh, terrible! Yeah, I cried. I cried because I thought, oh, it just was such a sad thing, and I already done it. I felt very guilty, and I felt terrible. And I just waited for the Billy and the nanny to go away. Once they left, I took the little Billy and the little kid on my shoulders, and I had to walk all the way back to camp. But during that trip back to camp, I became very, very happy because I thought, I've done it. I have killed a goat with my bow and arrow. So I'd finally achieved what I wanted to do, and I practiced for so very long, and it took me almost 6 months before I succeeded with my first goat. And so I felt so proud that I had done something for myself for once, that I learned this skill. Because if you are always dependent on everybody else, and especially on the supermarket, then that breeds insecurity and fear. Because then you're dependent on someone else, and you might lose that what you're dependent on, because you can't look after yourself. So with that hunting skill, I have become confident. A certain confidence that is sort of more inherent, more intrinsic.
What happened next?
Oh, so Peter was extremely happy, and because I'm the hunter and Peter is the cook. And we first cut it open and eat the heart, liver, and the kidneys, because those are very, very healthy, and you can fry them up straight away, and they taste very, very good. And so that's what we did.
And what's the process of, I imagine killing it is one part, but then the process of skinning it and preparing it, extracting the meat, that must be pretty full on, particularly for a vegetarian.
One thing that you don't know also when you're reading the book is the smell. Because you're cutting open and you might hit, or, the arrow might hit part of the intestines. So all that sort of half-digested food is coming out, and there's really nasty smell. So it
doesn't make you feel very hungry.
No, but you sort of have to pull yourself together a little bit and get on with the job, sort of a thing. a very Kiwi attitude, that is. And so I learned that. And the more you do, the better you get at it. So most often now, the intestines are not punctured and the smell is not too bad at all. But what I see, especially when I cut open a goat, is just how healthy they are. There's no diseases there at all. Every organ is looking really healthy, and it's fascinating. Also to see that if I cut my stomach open, I would look exactly the same.
Really?
Of course. We are animals.
I try not to think about that. Just like I try not to think about my meat or any of the animals that I eat as actually being animals. There's something sanitized about it being cooked or in a container that you buy in the supermarket or at the butcher, where it's very far removed from even looking like an animal. And I remember when I lived in Italy and I'd go to the supermarket and rabbits would be just like skinned in like plastic.
Oh, yeah.
And I would find that really confronting. I even find chickens confronting. Like if I'm doing something with a whole chicken raw, I'm like, oh, that's too, like a steak or a sausage is like so far removed from the actual animal that I find it easier to block out the fact that it was actually an animal and that it was alive.
Yeah, but when I tell people the reality of it, which is surely not a surprise.
Kind of is, isn't that weird? I am. I'm like, what do you mean it had intestines? Really?
Yeah, so by living out in the wilderness and hunting, I also very much confronted that we are animals. If a deer sees me walking around the forest, it sees another animal. A monkey, maybe with a funny colour skin, but that's all.
What did you then do with the goat? Did you use all of it?
Yeah, we used all of it and made it into a curry. And so we have to eat a lot of food in a very short time because it was summer at the time. But in the winter, we can keep the meat a lot longer.
I never thought about that. Of course, you don't have any refrigeration. So
no.
Do you have to kind of almost be like a bear and say, I'm just going to eat the goat and then we'll just eat some berries for the next few days?
Yes, indeed. Well, we eat as much meat as we can. But, in the winter, when we can keep it longer, the goat, quite a big goat, will last us a week. So that's a lot of meat.
The ideal, I suppose, as a hunter is that you kill your prey humanely and quickly, preferably instantaneously. But that doesn't always happen. What would happen when your aim wasn't quite so good and you would perhaps just injure an animal? What would you do next?
Well, that would be terrible. But that has happened. I once shot an arrow into a goat, and I couldn't find it anymore. The goat ran off, and I searched for hours and hours and hours. Couldn't find it. And that was terrible. It just felt terrible. But this happens also in the wild when, a predator animal, not so much perhaps in New Zealand, but in Europe with the wolves, they hunt and they wound and then they get nothing.
Did you feel terrible for you because you'd be hungry or terrible for the goat because it was injured?
Oh, no, I feel terrible for the goat. Not for me. No.
Also, you lost an arrow. There was another time where you sort of chased a wounded goat.
Yes, that's right. Once I said to Peter, okay, this time I will succeed because I had failed for days and days and days, probably more than a week. And I promised to come back with a goat. And I had to walk a long way to find, finally, this mob of goats. And then I saw a billy goat. I chose the biggest one because easier target. And I shot all my 6 arrows. I only had 6 arrows in my quiver. All my 6 arrows into this goat. And the goat was definitely wounded and had 1 arrow through the lungs. But to my amazement, it was gone. And I thought, should I now search my arrows or should I run after the goat? And then I thought, I had a quick look for arrows, all lost them, couldn't find them at all. And then I thought, okay, where would the goat go? Because I was trying to think where the goat would go. And I looked on the stones in the riverbed, and I saw some blood, and then I lost a trace of blood. And I thought, would the goat go through the forest, which is quite dense and, very hard to go through?
Especially with a whole lot of arrows sticking out of you.
Yeah, no, the arrows have sort of left the goat again. They have sort of gone through or they bounced off or God knows what. But anyway, he was wounded, but no arrow sticking out. But the goat obviously had gone up the creek, which much easier to walk. So I found him again by thinking. And then I started running after him because I thought surely the goat can't run very fast because it's wounded. And so I run over these huge boulders, and then the goat is running very, very fast as well. But then I had to wait and recover from the running. And then the goat was stopping as well, to my surprise. So we sort of together running and together resting. And this went on for hours, 2 hours perhaps. Wow. I don't know. I don't have a clock. But, a long time for my feeling. And right in the end, the goat was hiding in a little cave. And I thought, okay, this is my one chance. And I had my hunter's knife with me. And I stuck the knife in his ribs. And then it finally died. And then I thought, wow, this is, both horrific and an amazing adventure.
Being up that close to a living creature and killing it, how did that feel?
Almost surreal. I think amazing that I am doing this. I'm born in Holland. I'm on the other side of the world, running through this sort of jungle.
Stabbing a goat.
Yeah, indeed. And then, indeed, the stabbing, the whole stabbing, it's all, all things that I would never have dreamed of. And also, funny enough, because I was vegetarian, I would very much be judgmental of people who do just that.
The brutality of hunting.
Yes, indeed. I would be the first one to judge, actually, and to say, well, why would you want to kill animals for your own way of life? And yeah, so it's very interesting. And I learned that you have to be careful with judgment, because just wait a few years and you do exactly that, perhaps. It has happened to me a lot.
Did you ever think about, maybe I'll just nurture the goat and I'll try to take care of it and I'll make it my little goat pet? Does that ever cross your mind? Does that ever cross your mind? Or do you just click over into, this is food, I must kill it, I must eat it?
No, yeah, indeed. No, it often crosses my mind, especially when, that instant that I have this little kid goat on my shoulders and I'll think, I so much wish it was alive and it was my little pet, Yeah. It would have been so nice. But you have to remember that the goats are classified as a pest in New Zealand. And if you're going to start breeding up goats in New Zealand, the Department of Conservation will be very angry with you.
You mentioned your husband, Peter. How much older than you is he?
30 years. So I met him when I was 22 and he was 52.
And what was his life story? Why was he footloose and fancy-free at 52, and how did you two get together?
He was working in a university lecturer in New Zealand, and he was working in this building, looking out of the window thinking, well, this is not really my life at all. He didn't wish to continue this way of life. And he wanted to make such a radical change of his life. He wanted to find out what freedom is, or die trying, as he always says. He sold everything, and with just one little backpack, he went to travel in India.
And that's where you met?
And yes, 5 years later, we met. Yeah.
Had Peter been married before? Did he have a family?
He never had children, but at the time he went to live in India, he was married to a Fijian Indian woman.
And I wanted to ask about children. Is that something that you have thought about in the time that you guys have been together?
Well, Peter doesn't want to have children because he finds himself too old for it. Also, if I would have children, then we, of course, would have a totally different way of life. We have to radically change our life and settle down. My worst nightmare is this vision of driving my children to school in my car. And then making sure they got their school uniforms on. And when they come home, I have to wash them, school uniforms, in a washing machine. I can't think of anything worse.
While monitoring their screen time.
Yes, indeed. Because why should they want to live the way I want to live? Why should they want to be living in the wilderness? No, and doing anything on the computer is much more interesting, perhaps.
So it was never a consideration to perhaps have children and have them experience that same kind of lifestyle that you were?
No, I don't think it is easy. It certainly wouldn't be easy to have children in a tent. It's all right. You hear of people who have children in, they go and live off the grid and they have some happy years. I don't know if it's lasts very long, but yeah, of course it's possible. It's possible, but not for me, no.
Had you not met Peter, do you think you might have chosen a different path, or was having kids just something that was just never that strong a desire for you?
Never been too much of a strong desire. I always had a strong desire to have an adventurous life. Always been thinking and dreaming of expeditions since I was a kid. I never thought so much about children, no. But yeah, there are different ways of living, and having children is very limiting to a lot of different ways of living. So I would say, if you want to, don't take it too lightly to take children, because we meet a lot of people, especially men, I must say. They say, since I have my children, our life is finished in terms of freedom. Yeah. They find it very limiting.
Yeah, it can be. It's funny you say your dream was to have a big adventurous life. My dream is to do the same thing every day.
Really?
And be at home. Yeah, I love it. Like, routine is my dream. Yeah, it is. I really like it. Makes me feel safe and secure. That idea of being on a goat track, no pun intended. I really like that. What sort of pressure is put on your relationship by living the way that you do in the wilderness for, you say you come into sort of town every 3-4 months, but you've been doing this for almost a decade now?
Yeah, since 2010. It is very confronting. If you live with somebody intensely, then you learn a lot about yourself. And you have to, I don't see how people can live together if you don't use opportunities to learn more about yourself. If you're always going to defend yourself in every argument, then you're going to have a lot of arguments. You're going to have a lot of fights. So I try to always listen. When Peter says, you do this or this, and it's so annoying, I'll try, at least pretend to listen. And then after you pretend, you actually listen. And what he wants to say about it, because I might learn something. But if you don't have that attitude, it's going to be really difficult, I think.
Do you talk all the time?
Not all the time, like when I'm busy or when he's busy, obviously not. But we got a lot of time to talk, yes. And we like to bring one book with us, one book that we can read endlessly.
For 4 months?
Yeah, for 3 or 4 months, yeah. And some of them last even longer than that.
How slowly do you read, Miriam?
It's the fact that you have to read it over and over and over again. For instance, at
so
the moment,
you read it lots of times?
Yes, it's philosophy, and it's hardcore philosophy such as Friedrich Nietzsche. You can read that a lot and still not understand it. It's great.
So that is how you sort of keep your mind occupied.
That's right. And also we play a lot of chess.
Right. What about music?
Yeah. That's one thing I do miss occasionally. I play music and I sing when I come back in the city. But no, there's not so much music coming from me in the wilderness. But of course, there's a lot of birds, the original music. And funny enough, when you camp near a river, you also hear a lot of melodies and sort of strange tunes coming from the flowing water. It's very peculiar.
What's that process like when you come back into what I will call civilization every 3 months? I imagine the sort of the re-entry process, is it quite jarring?
Very overwhelming. I find especially being in the car on the road very, very dangerous. Because it is dangerous. Statistically, a lot of people die on the road. And everyone feels very secure in their little car. But of course, in reality, there's no such thing as being secure in your car. If someone else falls asleep or something, then, you're gone. So I found that very dangerous and scary. All the rest, there is so much noise.
Yeah.
I don't know how people can stand it. It's like a form of torture.
And so much information coming at you, right?
Yeah, and so much to read as well. So my eyes then want to see everything and read all those advertisements everywhere. I want to read everything. But on the other hand, I'm also more aware because of the hunting, all the senses that's improved. And so it's also much more fascinating For instance, there's a lot of plants growing on very unusual places in cities.
Really?
And then those plants, yeah, you should look around, coming out of concrete and out of buildings and little flowers everywhere. And with that, of course, come all the wildlife.
What's your relationship like to technology?
So we live without technology, but once we are in the city, then we're like everyone else and go straight on the computer and that, and I'll just see how addictive it is.
Yes.
And how much time it eats. So the computer is really eating your time away. It's amazing how you think, I spent 5 minutes sending an email. No, 2 hours later, I don't know where the time goes. But I think the main problem is that it keeps your brain awake at night, and so it causes sleep deprivation. And that, I think, is one of the main problems in modern society. People suffer from sleep deprivation, and with it come all the diseases. And so that's, it's kind of unsolvable if people keep living with electricity and technology.
How long can you stand to sort of be in a city for before you have to get back?
Peter and I always say we have to do the 90 and 10%. So 90% in the wilderness and 10% in the city to keep sane. Because we also get sleep deprived. And it's amazing that it takes 2 weeks to sort of wind down, but only 1 day to speed up again. Yeah, indeed.
What else do you do when you're there? What else do you miss that you love to do when you're in the city? Certain foods that you eat, activities?
No. Well, the first shower is fantastic, of course. And I like the smell of the soap and all those sort of things. But the second shower is already a little bit normal. And the third shower, I hardly notice. So, but one thing I really hate is the sleeping bags. The sort of plastic sleeping bags to make them light. And you sweat in them, and they're really, they're getting quite dirty. And I'd like to get rid of them.
What do you sleep in when you're in the wilderness? Do you sleep on the ground?
Yes, well, we've got a little mat.
Yeah.
So we sleep on a mat on the ground.
In a sleeping bag?
Sometimes we're in a sleeping bag, but if we are longer in one place, we take our furs. So I have made a mat and a duvet from possum fur. And we sleep underneath this. And this is so nice and so warm.
Wow. So do you actually walk around, I was going to say the jungle, the bush, the jungle, whatever, in like animal skins, like Tarzan and Jane?
Not all the time, but I've got a jacket made from possum skin. And so we wear that when it's very cold.
That you sewed yourself after skinning the possums?
Yes, so I learned how to treat the skins and make garments and that out of it, yeah. So I made the mats and the duvets for that, and gloves and hats and all that. It's very, very warm. And if you think about it, 1,000 years ago in cold places, people would have lived with fur. They probably still do now in the north. But they would think all the synthetic stuff is really bad quality. They would say, poor people in 2018, bad garments.
Yes, wearing their Yeezy trainers instead of possum booties.
Yeah.
I didn't ask you why you decided to live this way. I probably should have started with that question.
For different reasons. One, to have a great adventure, do something different. But also we wanted to find out what happens to the mind, to the body and mind, when living so far away from civilization and to live in isolation and in the beauty of nature. What happens to the mind? And so we found out, first of all, that humans are very, very small, very, very insignificant, and that our petty little psychological problems are even smaller. And, an individual is not very important, obviously, because everything comes and goes. But even whole groups, even species of animals and plants come and go, if you look over history, obviously, right? So we found out that life is mostly interested in life itself. Only in life itself. Because if the whole planet gets bombed to bits, then life will come out again. It will find a way to manifest itself in a material way. So if it's not humans, it will be some other intelligent creature.
What have you noticed about changes in your body, both internally and externally?
I'll become a lot stronger because of the meat. And as I said, my hair got thicker in that. And I just feel so much healthier. But it's also because we're sleeping a lot. So in the winter, we sleep probably 14 hours or so. It's a very long time.
Under your possum doona.
Under the possum, yeah.
And any plans to end this big adventure and live in a different way, maybe in a city or a town?
Conventional way? No, I don't think. The moment I met Peter, I never had a boring day in my life. He always wants some sort of adventure, never the normal, and which is very encouraging. I don't think we will end up in a city. On the other hand, we go with like open doors. So if someone says, I'm living in New York, would you like to stay here for the summer or a short period of time, 3 months? We will say, yes, of course. We go with this open door and see how that is to live in New York. But to have this as a permanent, sort of a settle down, live in a city, no, I don't think so. No.
Miriam, it's been so fascinating to talk to you. Thank you so much. And when are you heading back out?
We're now in Cairns. In next week or so, we will fly back to New Zealand and see what's waiting for us there.
Enjoy your last shower.
Yes, thank you.
How incredible is that story? I can't even cope with camping, let alone washing my hair with my own wee. I would love to hear what you think about Miriam's story. So call us on the PodPhone on 02 8999 9386. If you want to read more of Miriam's story, we have an excerpt from her book on Mamma Mia. If you just head to our show notes, there's a link there. Her book's called Woman in the Wilderness. It is so nice to be back in your ears for a new year. Next week on No Filter, my conversation with the man who describes himself as the happiest person in the world. And he's 98. No Filter is produced by Eliza Ratliff. I'm Mia Friedman, and if you like our show, please tell a friend and suggest they subscribe. I'll see you on Mamma Mia. Are you feeling a bit blah about the new year? Are you dreading being back in a job that you don't love or just itching to do something with more meaning? I'm Mia Friedman, and 11 years ago, I felt exactly like that. And then I started my own business, and everything changed. I got to be not just the boss of my work life, but the boss of my whole life. Because I called the shots. I got to decide when, where, and how I worked every day. Does that sound like a dream? Look, I'll be honest with you, it's not all rainbows. Working for yourself can be crazy, but it's your crazy because you're in charge. And the best bit is that you're building something for yourself. For years, I've had women telling me they have an idea or a dream, but they just don't know what to do next. So, I've fixed it. Enter the Lady Startup Activation Plan. It's a 6-week course that you can do in your own time, online, where I'll personally take you step by step through everything you need to know to go all the way from idea to launch. All of it. I'll give you the templates, the links, the checklists, the complete roadmap. I'll also give you a community to hold you up and cheer you on. The next course starts on February 4th and enrolments are only open for a few days. They close on this Australia Day long weekend, so you'll have to be quick. Hundreds of women have already done this course and hundreds of lady startups have been born from it.
So my name is Katie Rockcliffe. I started this course because I'm a new business owner. I'm yet to launch. I wanted to learn a million things from Mia Friedman, who I knew full well could teach them to me. And I was very excited at that prospect, and her course has fully delivered.
My name's Isabella Hanley. My latest startup is Ruby Tuesday Digital Consulting. The course was amazing. I enjoyed it so much. I found that it was so helpful for my business. It took me from where I was initially, was kind of plodding along. Everything was okay, but it's taken me kind of to the next level, and it's empowered me to be able to do things that I was a little bit frightened of, a little bit scared of. So that's been really fantastic.
So come join me and other women who've dreamed of starting their own business or side hustle, but just never knew where to start. Here, you start here. I know this works and I can't wait to do it with you. Head to ladystartup.com.au to make this year the one where you change your life.